Socrates asks, "What, then, do you wish first? Shall we discuss the sun, as you mentioned it first?" Hermogenes responds, "By all means." Socrates further adds, "I think it would be clearer if we were to use the Doric form of the name. The Dorians call it Helios. Now Helios might be derived from collecting men when he rises, or because he always turns about the earth in his course, or because he variegates the products of the earth, for variegate is identical with Aeolian. From Helios comes the modern English prefix helio, meaning pertaining to the sun, used in compound words such as heliocentrism, aphelion, heliotropium, heliophobia, fear of the sun, and heliolatry, sun worship. Helios is the son of Hyperion and Thea, or Euryphessa, or Ethra, or Basilia, and the only brother of the goddesses Eos, the dawn, and Selene, the moon. If the order of mention of the three siblings is meant to be taken as their birth order, then out of the 4 authors that give him and his sisters a birth order, 2 make him the oldest child, 1 the middle, and the other the youngest. Helios was not among the regular and more prominent deities. Rather, he was a more shadowy member of the Olympian circle. Despite being a relatively marginal god, he was one of the most ancient ones, and one that the other gods did not want to meddle with. From his lineage, Helios might thus be described as a second-generation Titan, but the ancient Greeks were fairly vague on the matter. Homer in the Odyssey calls him Helios Hyperion, literally the sun up above, with Hyperion used in a patronymic sense to Helios. Beyond his Homeric hymn, not many texts describe his physical appearance. Euripides describes him as Chrysopos, meaning golden-eyed, or golden-faced or beaming like gold. Mesomedes of Crete writes that he has golden hair, and Apollonius Rhodius that he has light-emitting, golden eyes. According to the Augustan poet Ovid, he dressed in Tyrian purple robes and sat on a throne of bright emeralds. In ancient artifacts such as coins, vases, or reliefs, he is presented as a beautiful youth with wavy hair, a strong god in the bloom of youth, with a crown of rays upon his head. His solar crown traditionally had 12 rays, symbolizing the 12 months of the year. He was usually represented clothed, his face somewhat full. In a Mithraic invocation, Helios's appearance is given as thus: a god is then summoned. He is described as a youth, fair to behold, with fiery hair, clothed in a white tunic and a scarlet cloak and wearing a fiery crown. He is named as Helios, Lord of heaven and earth, God of gods. The earliest artistic representations of the chariot god come from the Parthian period, 3rd century, in Persia, where there is evidence of rituals being performed for the sun god by magi, indicating an assimilation of the worship of Helios and Mithras. Homer described Helios as a god who gives joy to mortals, and other ancient texts give him the epithet gracious, hilaros, given that he is the source of life and regeneration, and associated with the creation of the world. The comic playwright Aristophanes in Nephili describes Helios as the horse guider, who fills the plain of the earth with exceeding bright beams, a mighty deity among gods and mortals. One passage recorded in the Greek magical papyri says of Helios, "The earth flourished when you shone forth and made the plants fruitful when you laughed and brought to life the living creatures when you permitted." He is said to have helped create animals out of primeval mud. Helios was envisioned as a god driving his chariot from east to west each day, pulled by 4 white horses. In the ancient world, people were not too troubled over how his chariot flew through the sky, as they did not envision the earth as a spherical object, so Helios would not be traveling around a globe in an orbit. Rather, he crossed the sky from east to west each morning in a linear direction. The chariot and his horses are mentioned by neither Homer nor Hesiod. The earliest work in which they are attested is the Homeric hymn to Helios. Although the chariot is usually said to be the work of Hephaestus, Hyginus states that it was Helios himself who built it. In one Greek vase painting, Helios appears riding across the sea in the cup of the Delphic tripod, which appears to be a solar reference. His chariot is described as golden or pink in color. The Ori, goddesses of the seasons, are part of his retinue and help him yoke his chariot. His sister Eos, the dawn, would open the gates for Helios, and would often accompany him in his daily swing across the skies. Every day he rose from the ocean, the great earth-encircling river, carried by his horses. As he rides in his chariot, he shines upon men and deathless gods, and piercingly he gazes with his eyes from his golden helmet. Bright rays beam dazzlingly from him, and his bright locks streaming from the temples of his head gracefully enclose his far-seen face. A rich, fine-spun garment glows upon his body and flutters in the wind, and stallions carry him. Then, when he has stayed his golden-yoked chariot and horses, he rests there upon the highest point of heaven, until he marvelously drives them down again, through heaven to ocean. Homeric Hymn 31 to the Sun. In Homer, he is said to go under the earth at sunset, but it is not clear whether that means he travels through Tartarus. Athenaeus in his Deipnosophisty relates that, at the hour of sunset, Helios climbs into a great cup of solid gold in which he passes from the Hesperides in the farthest west to the land of the Ethiops, with whom he passes the dark hours. According to Athenaeus, Mimnermus said that in the night Helios travels eastwards with the use of a bed, also created by Hephaestus, in which he sleeps, rather than a cup, and writes that Helios gained a portion of toil for all his days, as there is no rest for either him or his horses. Just like his chariot and horses, the cup is attested in neither Hesiod nor Homer, first appearing in the Titanomachy, an 8th century BC epic poem attributed to Eumelus of Corinth. Tragedian Aeschylus in his lost play Prometheus Unbound, a sequel to Prometheus Bound, describes the sunset as such. There is the sacred wave, and the coiled bed of the Erythraean Sea, and there the luxuriant marsh of the Ethiopians, situated near the ocean, glitters like polished brass, where daily in the soft and tepid stream, the all-seeing sun bathes his undying self, and refreshes his weary steeds. In the extreme east and west lived people who tended to his horses in their stalls, people for whom summer and heat were perpetual and rightful. The sun god is described as being tireless in his journeys as he repeats the same process day after day for an eternity. Polydas sarcastically wrote that the sun to men is the god of light, but if he too were insolent to them in his shining, they would not desire even light. On several instances in mythology, the normal solar schedule is disrupted. Helios was ordered not to rise for 3 days during the conception of Heracles and made the winter days longer in order to look upon Leucothoe. Athena's birth was a sight so impressive that Helios halted his steeds and stayed still in the sky for a long while, as heaven and earth both trembled at the newborn goddess' sight. In the Iliad, Hera, who supports the Greeks, makes him set earlier than usual against his will, during battle. Later still, during the same war, after his sister Eos's son Memnon was killed, she made him downcast, causing his light to fade, so she could freely steal her son's body undetected by the armies, as he consoled his sister in her grief over Memnon's death. It was said that summer days are longer due to Helios often stopping his chariot mid-air to watch from above nymphs dancing during the summer, and sometimes he is late to rise because he lingers with his consort. If the other gods wish so, Helios can be hastened on his daily course when they wish it to be night. When Zeus desired to sleep with Alcmene, he made one night last threefold, hiding the light of the sun by ordering Helios not to rise for those 3 days. Satirical author Lucian of Samosata dramatized this myth in one of his dialogues of the gods, where the messenger of the gods, Hermes, goes to Helios on Zeus' orders to tell him not to rise for 3 days so Zeus can spend much time with Alcmene. Although Helios reluctantly agrees and wishes the best of luck, he complains about this decision of the king of gods, finding the reason too weak for humanity to be deprived of sunlight and stay in the dark for so long. He negatively compares Zeus to his father, claiming Cronus never abandoned his marital bed and Rhea for the love of some mortal woman. From the union of Zeus and Alcmene, Heracles was born. While Heracles was traveling to Erythea to retrieve the cattle of Geryon for his 10th labor, he crossed the Libyan desert and became so frustrated at the heat that he shot an arrow at Helios, the sun. Almost immediately, Heracles realized his mistake and apologized profusely. Pherecydes wrote that Heracles stretched his arrow at him menacingly, but Helios ordered him to stop, and Heracles, in fear, desisted. In turn, and equally courteous, Helios granted Heracles the golden cup which he used to sail across the sea every night from the west to the east, because he found Heracles' actions immensely bold. In the versions delivered by Apollodorus and Pherecydes, Heracles was only about to shoot Helios, but according to Panyasis, he did shoot and wounded the god. Heracles used this golden cup to reach Erythea, and after he had taken Gerion's cattle, returned it back to its owner. A late 6th century or early 5th century BC Leucothoe depicts Heracles offering a sacrifice on one side, and Helios rising on the other, suggesting that Heracles is sacrificing to the god, seeking help from him to reach the three-bodied Geryon. On the vase, Helios is rising in his chariot between Eos and Nyx, the night, represented as swirls of mist, while Heracles is roasting the sacrificial meat next to a lurking dog, identified as Cerberus, guarding the entrance to the underworld. From this, one can infer that the vase depicts the place in the ocean, where the earth, the sky, and the sea meet, as the light of Helios is juxtaposed, with the darkness of the underworld, separated by a barrier of mist. When the brothers Thyestes and Atreus fought over who would get to rule Mycenae following the death of the previous king, Eurystheus, Atreus suggested that whoever possessed a splendid golden ram would be declared king. Unbeknownst to Atreus, his unfaithful wife Arope had given Thyestes the ram, and thus Thyestes became king. Zeus sent Hermes to Atreus, telling him to get Thyestes to agree that should the sun rise in the west and set in the east, the kingship would be given to Atreus. Thyestes agreed, and Helios indeed rose where he usually set, and set where he usually rose, notwithstanding the unfairness of Thyestes' actions. The Mycenaeans then bowed to the man who had accomplished such an achievement, and reversed the course of the sun. According to Plato, Helios at first used to rise in the west and set in the east, and only changed that after the incident of the golden ram, as did the other celestial bodies which followed suit. Solar eclipses were phenomena of both fear and wonder in ancient Greece, and were seen as the sun abandoning humanity. According to a fragment of Archilochus, it is Zeus who blocks Helios and makes him disappear from the sky. Zeus the Olympian veiled the light to make it night at midday even as the sun was shining, so dread fear has overtaken men, he writes. In one of his paeans, the lyric poet Pindar describes a solar eclipse as the sun's light being hidden from the world, a bad omen of destruction and doom. Beam of the sun, what have you contrived, observant one, mother of eyes, highest star, in concealing yourself in broad daylight? Why have you made helpless men's strength in the path of wisdom, by rushing down a dark highway? Do you drive a stranger course than before? In the name of Zeus, swift driver of horses, I beg you, turn the universal omen, lady, into some painless prosperity for Thebes. Do you bring a sign of some war, or wasting of crops, or a mass of snow beyond telling, or ruinous strife, or emptying of the sea on land, or frost on the earth, or a rainy summer flowing with raging water, or will you flood the land and create a new race of men from the beginning? Plutarch in his Moralia writes that it is through love of the sun that the moon herself makes her circuit, and has her meetings with him to receive from him all fertility. Aristophanes describes a solar eclipse in his play Nephili that was observed in Athens in 425 BC. The fear associated with eclipses underscores the reverence and awe the Greeks held for Helios, the god who not only represented the sun but also embodied the regularity and stability of cosmic order. The myths and poetic descriptions of eclipses reflect a deep-seated belief in the interconnectedness of celestial events and terrestrial life. The Greeks viewed Helios as a crucial figure in the divine hierarchy, his actions and moods influencing the natural and human worlds alike. The occurrence of a solar eclipse was thus interpreted as a powerful and unsettling sign, potentially heralding significant changes or calamities. Some lists, cited by Hyginus, of the names of horses that pulled Helios' chariot are as follows. Scholarship acknowledges that, despite differences between the lists, the names of the horses always seem to refer to fire, flame, light, and other luminous qualities. According to Eumelus of Corinth, late 7th or early 6th century BC, the male trace horses are Eos, which translates by him the sky is turned, and Ethiops, as if flaming, parches the grain, and the female yoke-bearers are Bronte, thunder, and Sterope, lightning. According to Roman poet Ovid, 1st century BC, Phaeton's ride Pyroas, the fiery one, Eos, he of the dawn, Ethon, blazing, and Phlegon, burning. Hyginus writes that according to Homer, the horses' names are Abraxas and Nabeel, but Homer makes no mention of horses or chariot. Alexander of Aetolia, cited in Athenaeus, related that the magical herb grew on the island Thrinacia, which was sacred to Helios, and served as a remedy against fatigue for the sun god's horses. Escrian of Samos informed that it was known as the dog's tooth, and was believed to have been sewn by Cronus. The horses' names, emphasizing fire and light, highlight the essential nature of the sun as a source of life and energy. These divine steeds were not mere animals but embodiments of the fiery and luminous qualities of the sun itself. According to Pindar, when the gods divided the earth among them, Helios was absent, and thus he got no lot of land. He complained to Zeus about it, who offered to do the division of portions again. But Helios refused the offer, for he had seen a new land emerging from the deep of the sea, a rich, productive land for humans and good for cattle too. Helios asked for this island to be given to him, and Zeus agreed to it, with Lachesis, one of the three Fates, raising her hands to confirm the oath. Alternatively, in another tradition, it was Helios himself who made the island rise from the sea when he caused the water which had overflowed it to disappear. He named it Rhodes, after his lover Rhode, the daughter of Poseidon and Aphrodite or Amphitrite, and it became the god's sacred island, where he was honored above all other gods. With Rhode, Helios sired 7 sons, known as the Helios, sons of the sun, who became the first rulers of the island, as well as 1 daughter, Electri. 3 of their grandsons founded the cities Ialissos, Camaros, and Lindos on the island, named after themselves. Thus Rhodes came to belong to him and his line, with the autochthonous peoples of Rhodes claiming descent from the Helios. Once Athena was born from Zeus' head, Helios enjoined his children and the rest of the Rhodians to immediately build an altar for the goddess quickly, in order to win her favor, and apparently he disclosed the same to the Atticans too. They did as he told them. However, they forgot to bring fire with them to properly do the sacrifice. Zeus, however, sent a golden cloud and rained gold on them, and Athena still graced them with unmatched skill in every art. For this reason, Athena was worshipped in Rhodes with flameless sacrifices. The victim would be slain on the altar of burnt offering, but the fire was not set on the altar. The story of Phaethon, the ill-fated son of Helios, unfolds as a cautionary tale of youthful ambition and divine consequence. Across various versions of the myth, core elements remain consistent. Phaethon, driven by a desire to prove his divine lineage, implores his father Helios to allow him to drive the sun chariot for a single day. Traditionally, Phaethon is depicted as the son of Helios and the Oceanid nymph climbing. In other versions, Phaethon's mother is alternatively named Rhode or even Merope, an Oceanid nymph. Some accounts even cast Phaethon as the grandson of Helios through his father Clymenus, further complicating the familial dynamics in the myth. In Euripides' lost play Phaethon, the tragic tale unfolds with poignant details that underscore the consequences of divine lineage and mortal ambition. Clymene, married to King Merops of Ethiopia, harbors a secret known only to herself and the sun god, Helios, that Phaethon is not Merops' son but rather the offspring of her union with Helios. The play reveals Clymene's pivotal confession to Phaethon, divulging his true parentage and the promise Helios made to grant any wish to their child. Overwhelmed with a desire to confirm his divine heritage, Phaethon embarks on a journey eastward to seek out his father, Helios, and receive his confirmation. In a fragmentary passage preserved from the play, Helios reluctantly entrusts the reins of the sun chariot to his son, cautioning him with instructions to navigate safely through the celestial realms. He warns Phaethon to avoid the scorching heat of the Libyan desert and to steer clear of dangerous paths, such as those near the 7 Pleiades. Undaunted by the magnitude of his task, Phaethon seizes the reins with determination, urging the celestial steeds forward. The horses, sensing the inexperienced hands upon the reins, surge forward uncontrollably, threatening to destabilize the order of the heavens. To mitigate the impending catastrophe, Helios mounts a spare horse named Sirius, attempting to guide his son through the treacherous journey with words of warning and paternal concern. He shouts directions from his vantage point, desperately trying to avert disaster as Phaethon struggles to maintain control. Despite Helios' guidance, Phaethon's reckless ambition leads to catastrophic consequences. The chariot veers off course, wreaking havoc across the skies and scorching the earth below with unrelenting heat. Unable to rein in the chaos unleashed by his son, Helios watches in despair as the world trembles under the celestial turmoil. Inevitably, Phaethon meets his tragic end, struck down by a thunderbolt hurled by Zeus himself. The impact leaves Phaethon's lifeless body charred and smoldering, a grim testament to the folly of mortal ambition and the unforgiving power of the gods. Clytie, devastated by the loss of her son and the havoc wrought by his ill-fated journey, orders her slave girls to conceal Phaethon's remains from Merops, lamenting the role of Helios in her son's demise. Her revelation of Helios' part in Phaethon's fate incites Merops' fury, leading him to seek retribution against Clytie for her betrayal. The play concludes with the fate of Clytie left uncertain, as some propose she is saved by a deus ex machina, a divine intervention that spares her from Merops' wrath. Among the speculated identities of this divine savior is Helios himself. In Ovid's version of this tragic tale, the narrative unfolds with dramatic intensity as the sun god confronts the consequences of his son's audacious request. Following Epiphanes' mockery of Phaethon's divine lineage, Clytie urges her son to travel eastward to seek confirmation from Helios himself. Arriving at his father's palace, Phaethon is warmly received amid the splendor of Helios' court, where the sun god resides attended by other celestial beings. Helios, bound by his oath on the river Styx, grants Phaethon the privilege to drive his chariot for a single day, a gift he immediately regrets as he foresees the calamity it could unleash. Despite Helios' fervent warnings and pleas for reconsideration, Phaethon remains resolute in his desire to prove his divine parentage through this daring feat. With trepidation and sorrow, Helios watches as Phaethon takes the reins of the sun chariot. As the inexperienced youth drives recklessly across the skies, the earth suffers under the erratic course of the chariot. Where Phaethon steers too low, the scorching heat engulfs the land in flames. Where he ascends too high, the chill freezes the world beneath. Witnessing the catastrophic consequences of his son's hubris, Helios' heart breaks with grief. In a desperate attempt to save the world from further devastation, Zeus intervenes with a thunderbolt, striking Phaethon down from the skies and ending his tumultuous journey. Devastated by the loss of his beloved son, Helios is consumed by sorrow and refuses to resume his celestial duty. The world mourns as darkness envelopes the earth, deprived of the sun's radiant light. Yet, compelled by the pleas of the other gods and the stern directives of Zeus, Helios reluctantly returns to his celestial task, though his heart remains heavy with grief and guilt. In his anguish, Helios directs his pent-up fury towards his 4 celestial steeds, chastising them with lashes of his whip for their unwitting role in Phaethon's tragic demise. Nonnus of Panopolis offers a variant of the myth of Phaethon, narrated through the lens of Hermes. According to this version, Helios, the sun god, meets and falls deeply in love with Clytie, the daughter of Oceanus. Their union is blessed by her father, and they marry in happiness. In this account, there is no mention of Merops, and Phaethon is born within the bounds of this lawful marriage. When he grows up, fascinated with his father's job, he asks him to drive his chariot for a single day. Helios does his best to dissuade him, arguing that sons are not necessarily fit to step into their father's shoes, bringing up as example that none of Zeus' sons wields lightning bolts like he does. But under pressure of Phaethon and Clytie's begging both, he eventually gives in, and gives his son the reins and instructions for the road. As per all other versions of the myth, Phaethon's ride is catastrophic and ends in his death. Hyginus wrote that Phaethon secretly mounted his father's chariot without his father's knowledge or permission, aided by his sisters, the Heliades, who yoked the horses for him. This version also implies that Phaethon and his sisters were legitimate offspring of the sun god and his wife, raised in their father's house, rather than the result of an extramarital affair. In various versions of the myth, Helios managed to recover the reins in time, saving the earth from being scorched by the flames of the runaway chariot. A consistent detail across these versions is that Phaethon's sisters, the Heliades, mourn him by the Eridanus River and are transformed into black poplar trees, shedding tears of amber. According to Quintus Murnius, it was Helios who turned them into trees to honor their devotion to Phaethon. This part of the myth might have been a device to explain the origin of amber, as the Greek word for amber, electron, resembles elector, an epithet of Helios. The poplar tree, considered sacred to Helios, was revered for its sun-like, shining leaves. An epigram by Antipater of Thessalonica warns readers not to harm a sacred poplar because Helios cares for it. In one version of the myth, Helios conveys his dead son to the stars, transforming him into the constellation Auriga. The aftermath of Phaeton's tragic flight is later satirized by Lucian in a playful dialogue. Zeus, incensed by the chaos caused by Phaeton's ill-fated ride, admonishes Helios for his reckless indulgence of his son's ambitions. Threateningly, Zeus returns the damaged chariot to Helios and warns him against ever repeating such folly, lest he incur the wrath of the heavens. Helios, known as Helios Panoptes, the all-seeing sun, witnessed all that unfolded beneath his radiant gaze. When Hades, lord of the underworld, abducted Persephone from the fields of Enna, Helios was the solitary witness to the event. Even Hecate, attuned to the echoes of Persephone's cries, could only hear but not see the abduction unfold. Demeter, stricken with anguish over her daughter's disappearance, embarked on a desperate search. At Hecate's suggestion, she sought the counsel of Helios, the sun god whose far-reaching sight pierced through the veil of mortal and divine realms alike. Approaching Helios with reverence, and invoking her status as a goddess, Demeter implored him to share any knowledge of Persephone's fate. Moved by Demeter's grief, Helios spoke candidly, revealing the unsettling truth. With the consent of Zeus, Hades had taken Persephone against her will, to be his queen in the shadowy realm of the dead. Helios recounted the details of the abduction, explaining Zeus's role not only in permitting the marriage, but also in sanctioning the forcible taking of Persephone. In the Homeric hymn to Demeter, Helios offers words of reassurance, urging Demeter to accept the inevitability of Persephone's new role as queen of the underworld. He reminds her that Hades, despite his grim dominion, is not an unworthy match for Persephone. As Helios readies his winged horses and chariot to ascend into the sky at dawn, he advises Demeter to find solace in the fact that her daughter is now a powerful queen among the shades. In Ovid's Fasti, Demeter, distraught and desperate for answers, consults the stars for clues about Persephone's whereabouts. It is Helios, the constellation Ursa Major, who directs her to seek out Helios, for only he witnessed the events that transpired during the daylight hours. Demeter wastes no time in approaching Helios, who wastes no words in confirming the dire news and urging her to seek out the queen of the third world, Persephone, now a bride in the realm of her uncle. The role of Helios and Hecate in informing Demeter of Persephone's fate reflects a widespread theme across many cultures. In various traditions, the sun and the moon are revered as witnesses to all events on earth, due to their omnipresent gaze over the world. This episode also marks an early connection between Hecate and the moon, emphasizing her role as a companion to Helios in the realm of celestial observers. In another well-known myth involving Helios, the sun god played a crucial role in exposing the illicit affair between Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Ares, the god of war. According to the account in Book 8 of the Odyssey as described by the blind singer Demodocus, Helios, whose radiant gaze spanned all corners of the earth, caught Aphrodite and Ares in the throes of their adulterous union. Immediately, Helios did not hesitate to inform Hephaestus, Aphrodite's husband and master craftsman of the gods. Upon receiving the news, Hephaestus was consumed with fury and devised a cunning plan for revenge. He crafted an almost invisible net, so finely woven that it would be imperceptible to the naked eye. With his trap prepared, Hephaestus announced that he was departing for Lemnos, leaving Aphrodite and Ares alone together. Seizing the opportunity, Ares hastened to Aphrodite's side, and the two lovers entwined in passion. However, Helios, ever vigilant, promptly informed Hephaestus of their renewed affair. Enraged by their betrayal, Hephaestus rushed back, catching Aphrodite and Ares ensnared in his finely wrought net. Hephaestus wasted no time in summoning the other gods to witness the humiliating sight of the lovers caught in their deceit. Later versions of the myth introduce a young warrior named Alectryon into the tale. Ares appointed Alectryon to stand guard and alert him should anyone approach while he was with Aphrodite. However, Alectryon failed in his duty and fell asleep on watch. Taking advantage of Alectryon's lapse, Helios discovered the lovers once more, and promptly informed Hephaestus. In his wrath, Ares transformed Alectryon into a rooster as punishment for his negligence. The rooster, with its distinctive crow at dawn, forever serves as a reminder of Alectrion's failure and as a herald of Helios's imminent rise. According to Pausanias, the rooster became sacred to Helios, announcing his impending appearance each morning. Aphrodite, stung by Helios's revelations and the ensuing consequences, harbored a deep-seated animosity toward Helios and his descendants. Some versions of the myth even attribute Aphrodite's curse against Helios's daughter, Pasiphae, as revenge for his role in exposing her affair with Ares. Pasiphae, cursed by Aphrodite, fell passionately in love with the Cretan bull, an unnatural and destructive desire that resulted in the birth of the Minotaur. The repercussions of Aphrodite's wrath extended to Pasiphae's daughter, Phaedra, as well. According to myth, Phaedra's forbidden love for her stepson Hippolytus was also said to have been influenced by Aphrodite's vindictive machinations against Helios's lineage. The myth of Helios, Clytie, and Leucothoe unfolds with a tragic twist that reflects the complexities of love and revenge among the gods. After Aphrodite's curse upon Helios, the sun god found himself ensnared in a mortal affair that would lead to sorrow and transformation. Helios, consumed by a love he could not resist, turned his attention from the Oceanid Clytie to the mortal princess Leucothoe. Ovid vividly describes Helios's infatuation in his Metamorphoses, depicting the sun god's relentless pursuit of Leucothoe, even extending the length of winter days to prolong his gaze upon her beauty. Assuming the guise of Leucothoe's mother, Eurynome, Helios easily gained access to her palace. There, he dismissed her attendants under the pretense of sharing a secret with his daughter, revealing his divine form to the unsuspecting maiden. However, Clytie, still enamored with Helios despite his newfound affection for Leucothoe, could not bear to see him devoted to another. Consumed by jealousy and a desire to win back Helios's love, Clytie betrayed Leucothoe's secret affair to her father, King Orchomus. In a fit of paternal rage and to punish his daughter's indiscretion, Orchomus buried Leucothoe alive beneath the earth. Helios, learning of Leucothoe's fate, was devastated. His grief mirrored the anguish he had felt over the loss of his son Phaethon. Unable to revive Leucothoe, Helios poured nectar into the earth where she lay buried, transforming her lifeless body into a fragrant frankincense tree. This metamorphosis allowed Leucothoe to continue to breathe, albeit in a form altered by divine intervention. Clytie, hoping that her betrayal would bring Helios back to her side, was sorely mistaken. Helios, furious at Clytie for her role in Leucothoe's death, spurned her advances and departed, leaving her to mourn alone. Clytie, consumed by unrequited love and sorrow, stripped herself naked and refused all sustenance, sitting on a rock for 9 days and nights, gazing endlessly at Helios as he traversed the sky. Moved by her steadfast devotion, albeit too late, the gods transformed Clytie into a heliotrope flower, which followed Helios's movements across the heavens, turning its face toward him always. This transformation symbolized Clytie's eternal love for Helios, unchanged even in her altered form. Edith Hamilton notes the uniqueness of this myth in Greek mythology, where it is the mortal maiden who loves the unwilling god, in contrast to the more typical narrative of gods pursuing mortal women. The story of Clytie and Leucothoe, intertwined with elements of divine jealousy and mortal passion, has been theorized to explain the use of frankincense in Helios's worship, similar to how the story of Daphne's transformation into a laurel tree explained the use of laurel. Despite medieval and later depictions substituting the purple heliotropium with the sunflower, originally described as purple or violet by Ovid, the heliotrope flower remains associated with Clytie's enduring love for Helios in classical mythology. In Sophocles' tragedy Ajax, the titular hero Ajax the Great, facing the devastating shame of losing the contest for Achilles' armor to Odysseus, decides to take his own life. Before committing suicide, Ajax delivers a poignant speech that includes an appeal to Helios, the sun god. Standing on the brink of death, Ajax invokes Helios, the deity whose chariot traverses the sky each day. Ajax asks Helios to ensure that his parents, Telamon and Arabia, receive news of his tragic fate. His request is deeply symbolic, as Helios was traditionally viewed as the all-seeing deity who witnessed everything that transpired on Earth during his journey across the heavens. In the play, Ajax's plea to Helios is a final acknowledgement of the sun god's role as a witness to the hero's life and deeds. Ajax acknowledges Helios as a god who sees all and thus should be the one to carry the news of his demise to his loved ones. This moment underscores the deep connection between mortal life and the divine in Greek tragedy, where even in death, heroes like Ajax seek recognition and closure through appeals to the gods. Shortly after making this solemn request to Helios, Ajax takes his own life, fulfilling his tragic fate. His suicide leaves an indelible mark on the narrative of the Trojan War and serves as a powerful testament to the complexities of honor, shame, and mortality in ancient Greek literature. During the Titanomachy, Helios aligned himself with Zeus and the other Olympian gods against the Titans. According to surviving fragments attributed to Eumelus of Corinth, Helios was noted for abstaining from direct attacks on the Olympians, possibly due to his status as a god closely tied to the natural order and the passage of time. After the Titans were defeated, Helios was honored for his support. The gods granted him a place in the sky and bestowed upon him a magnificent chariot drawn by 4 horses, 2 male and 2 female. This chariot allowed him to drive across the sky during the day, illuminating the world with his radiant light, and a vessel to sail across the ocean during the night. In the Gigantomachy, Helios again played a crucial role. Pseudo-Apollodorus recounts that during the battle against the giant Alcyoneus stole Helios' cattle from Erythea, where the god kept them. This theft was a significant event that sparked the war between the giants and the gods, highlighting Helios' possessions as targets of the giants' aggression. Moreover, in a strategic move against the giants, Gaia sought a magical herb that would render them invincible. Zeus, anticipating this threat, ordered Helios, along with his sisters Selene, the moon, and Eos, the dawn, to withhold their light. This darkness was crucial in denying Gaia the opportunity to use the herb to protect the giants, thereby ensuring the gods' victory. Athena, in turn, called upon the mortal hero Heracles to aid the gods in their battle against the giants, fulfilling the prophecy that foretold the giants' defeat at the hands of a mortal. During the tumultuous battle of gods and giants in Phlegra, where the forces clashed, Helios played a crucial role not just in illuminating the battlefield but also in aiding his fellow deities. After the fierce struggle, Helios demonstrated his benevolence by rescuing Hephaestus, who had grown weary from the intense combat. Helios graciously offered Hephaestus a ride on his chariot, ferrying the exhausted god to safety. In gratitude for this act of kindness, Hephaestus later forged 4 remarkable creations for Helios' son Eats, 4 ever-flowing fountains and fire-breathing bulls, which became iconic symbols of his realm. Following the victorious conclusion of the Gigantomachy, one of the defeated giants, Picolus, sought refuge on Aiaia, the enchanted island where Helios' daughter Circe, a powerful sorceress, resided. Picolus attempted to drive Circe away from her domain, but Helios swiftly intervened to protect his daughter. In defense of Circe, Helios confronted and slew Picolus. As the giant fell, his blood spilled onto the earth, giving rise to a new plant known as moly. This plant, distinguished by its black root and white flower, was said to have grown from the battlefield where Helios vanquished the giant. Its name, derived from the Greek word malos, meaning hard, commemorated the fierce struggle that led to its creation. The moly plant held significant mythological importance, as it was considered a potent herb that only immortals could uproot from the ground. In Homer's Odyssey, Hermes advised Odysseus to use moly to protect himself and his companions from Circe's magical transformations, illustrating its mystical properties and association with divine protection. Despite his generally benevolent nature, Helios occasionally found himself in conflicts with other gods, much like the disputes between Athena and Poseidon over Athens. In the case of Corinth, similar tensions arose between Helios and Poseidon, representing the elements of fire and water respectively. The conflict centered on which deity would claim patronage over the city. To resolve the dispute, the Hecatonchir Briareos, an elder god known for his wisdom and impartiality, was called upon to arbitrate. Briareos decided to award the Acrocorinth, the Acropolis of Corinth, to Helios, recognizing his association with the sun and fire. Poseidon, in turn, received dominion over the Isthmus of Corinth, reflecting his connection with the sea and waters. Helios' involvement in myths also extended to interpersonal rivalries and transformations. According to alien Nereides, the son of the sea god Nereus and the Oceanidorus, became a lover of Poseidon. In a version of the myth, Helios transformed Nereides into a shellfish, although the reasons for this act remain unclear in alien sources. Speculations arose that Helios may have been offended by Nereides' swiftness or that there was a rivalry between Helios and Poseidon over Nereides' affections. In another tale, recounted by Aesop, Helios engaged in a contest with Boreas, the north wind god, to determine who was the stronger deity. Their competition focused on persuading a passing traveler to remove his cloak. Boreas attempted to use his fierce wind to force the traveler to remove his cloak, but instead, the man tightened his cloak against the cold. When Helios shone brightly, the traveler, overcome by the heat, willingly removed his cloak, thus declaring Helios the victor. The fable conveyed the moral that persuasion could achieve what force could not, emphasizing Helios' influence through the power of sunlight. This theme of rivalry and competition among the gods extended into the realm of human interactions as well. Athenaeus of Naucratis, in his work De Sophisti, referenced an anecdote from Hieronymus of Rhodes' historical notes involving playwrights Sophocles and Euripides. The anecdote humorously paralleled the fable of Helios and Boreas, where Sophocles and Euripides bantered about their encounters with the same boy. Sophocles humorously attributed his disrobing to the heat of the sun rather than a boy's actions, while teasing Euripides about his own misadventures. Relating to his role as the sun and his lineage as the son of Thea, goddess of sight, Helios was revered as a deity who possessed the power to bestow or deprive people of their sight. In ancient Greek belief, it was thought that eyes emitted light that allowed humans to see, a concept deeply tied to Helios' role in illuminating the world. According to Pindar, Helios was considered the progenitor of all mortal eyes, being the source from which the ability to see and the phenomenon of vision itself stemmed. Mortals owed their sight, as well as blindness, to Helios' influence, underscoring his dual capacity to bring both light and darkness into the lives of humans. The myth of Orion, a renowned hunter, illustrates Helios' benevolent side in restoring sight. Orion had been blinded by King Enopion for attempting to assault his daughter Merope. Seeking help, Orion was guided by Sedalion, provided by Hephaestus, to the east where he encountered Helios. Moved by Orion's plight, Helios healed his eyes, restoring his sight, and enabling him to continue his pursuits. In contrast, the tale of Phineus presents Helios in a more punitive role. According to Apollonius Rhodius Argonautica, Phineus, a seer who had divulged too much of the future to mankind, incurred Zeus' wrath. Zeus punished Phineus by blinding him, a torment compounded by the harpies who continually harassed him, stealing or defiling his food. An alternative version, however, attributes Phineus' blindness directly to Helios. When Zeus gave Phineus a choice between death and blindness as punishment for his sons being killed by their stepmother, Phineus opted to lose his sight, preferring perpetual darkness over death. Offended by this choice, Helios blinded Phineus and unleashed the harpies upon him as further retribution. Pseudo-Oppian adds another layer to the myth by suggesting that Helios' anger was provoked by Phineus' prophetic prowess, which he used to achieve some obscure victory. After the sons of Boreas, Calais and Zets, finally liberated Phineus from the harpies' torment, Helios transformed him into a mole, a creature condemned to live in perpetual darkness. Another version claims that Eets, Helios' son and ruler of Colchis, requested his father to blind Phineus due to his assistance to Eets' enemies. In yet another tale involving Helios' wrath, the myth of Daedalus and Icarus provides a cautionary tale about hubris and the consequences of defying divine authority. Daedalus, the ingenious Athenian inventor, and his son Icarus sought to escape the island of Crete, ruled by King Minos, by fashioning wings from feathers and wax. However, Icarus, young and impetuous, flew too close to the sun, believing himself equal to Helios in greatness. Helios, angered by Icarus' audacity, unleashed his scorching rays upon him, causing the wax holding the wings together to melt. Helpless, Icarus fell into the sea and drowned. In honor of the ill-fated youth, Helios decreed that the sea where Icarus met his tragic end would bear his name, the Icarian Sea. Similarly, in the myth of Arge, a huntress who boasted of her speed compared to the sun, Helios took offense at her words. Arge arrogantly claimed that, swift as the sun may be, she would eventually catch up to her quarry, a fast stag. Infuriated by her boast, Helios punished Arge by transforming her into a doe, forever consigning her to the hunted rather than the hunter. In a rare variant of the myth of Smyrna, also known as Myrrha, Helios assumes a vengeful role, where he curses Smyrna to fall in love with her own father, King Cinyras. This unusual version attributes Smyrna's tragic fate to Helios' wrath, although in most other accounts, including those by Ovid and Hyginus, it is Aphrodite, goddess of love, who curses Smyrna as punishment for disrespecting her power. In his sacred island of Thrinacia, Helios kept watch over his prized flocks of sheep and cattle, which held significant symbolism in ancient Greek myth and culture. Helios was the proud owner of 7 herds of cows and numerous sheep. Each of these herds consisted of 50 animals, totaling 350 cows and 350 sheep in all. These numbers were not arbitrary. They mirrored the early ancient Greek calendar, which had 350 days corresponding to the number of cows and 350 sheep representing each day of the year. The 7 herds also corresponded to the days of the week, reinforcing the divine order and cyclical nature of time. In the Homeric hymn 4 to Hermes, the mischievous and cunning god, acknowledges his reverence for Helios and the other gods after being caught stealing Apollo's sacred cattle. Augeas, often considered Helios' son in some versions of the myth, was entrusted with a herd of 12 sacred bulls, emphasizing the divine significance of Helios' livestock. Erythea, another notable place associated with Helios, was where the giant Alcyoneus stole his sacred cattle during the Gigantomachy, the battle between the gods and giants. Additionally, Helios maintained a flock of thick-fleeced sheep at Taenarum, a location known both for its connection to Helios and as an entrance to the underworld at the tip of the Mani Peninsula. In Apollonia, Illyria, Helios kept a flock of sheep, overseen by a man named Pythenius. When wolves devoured the sheep, the other Apolloniads blamed Pythenius for neglect and gouged out his eyes. Angered by this harsh treatment, Helios caused the earth to grow barren and cease bearing fruit. The land only became fruitful again after the Apolloniads appeased Pythenius by granting him 2 suburbs and a house he selected, thus pleasing the god. This tale, with variations, is also recounted by the Greek historian Herodotus, who names the man Avienus and treats the account as a historical event rather than a myth. Herodotus adds that Avienus intended to replace the lost sheep but was discovered, leading the Apolloniads to consult the oracle of Delphi. The oracle revealed that the sheep's loss was the divine will of Helios. Unaware of the oracle's guidance, the Apolloniads asked Avienus what compensation he desired, and he requested a moderate reparation. During Odysseus' perilous journey home to Ithaca, he and his men faced the trials of the island of Circe. Circe, forewarning Odysseus of the dangers ahead, cautioned him specifically about Thrinacia, the sacred island of the sun god Helios. She emphasized the sanctity of Helios' herds and warned Odysseus not to harm them, lest dire consequences befall him and his crew. "You will now come to the Thrinacian island," Circe spoke with solemnity, "where you will see many herds of cattle and flocks of sheep belonging to the sun god. There are 7 herds of cattle and 7 flocks of sheep, each with 50 heads. They do not breed or diminish in number. They are tended by Phaethusa and Lampetia, daughters of the sun god Hyperion and Neaera. If you leave these flocks unharmed and focus solely on your journey home, you may yet reach Ithaca after much hardship. But if you harm them," she warned, "your ship and comrades will be destroyed. Even if you survive, you will return home late, in dire straits, having lost all your men." Despite Odysseus' warnings and Circe's counsel, as their supplies dwindled and desperation gripped them, some of his crewmen succumbed to their hunger and impiously slaughtered and consumed some of the sacred cattle of the sun on Thrinacia. The daughters of Helios, Phaethusa and Lampetia, witnesses to this sacrilege, promptly reported the offense to their father. Helios then appeals to Zeus, telling him to dispose of Odysseus' men, or he will go in the underworld and shine among the dead instead. He rejected any form of compensation offered by the crewmen, including their offer to build a new temple in Ithaca. Helios insisted on a death-for-death repayment for the loss of his cattle. Zeus, recognizing the severity of the offense against Helios, agreed to intervene. With a powerful lightning bolt, Zeus obliterated Odysseus' ship and all the crewmen who had partaken in the sacrilege against Helios' sacred herds. Only Odysseus himself was spared from this divine punishment, destined to endure further trials and challenges on his arduous journey back to his homeland. This episode is deeply symbolic in its portrayal of Helios' wrath and the consequences of mortals' disrespect for divine sanctity. The cattle of the sun, tended by his daughters Phaethon and Lampetia, bear profound significance. The epithets bright and shining attributed to them are direct reflections of their father's solar nature, reinforcing their roles as guardians of light and order. In Greek mythology, Hades is the realm where Helios' light cannot penetrate, signifying the boundary between the living and the dead. For Helios to threaten to shine among the dead in the underworld disrupts this balance, highlighting the gravity of the sacrilege committed by Odysseus' crew. Eustathius's interpretation adds another layer of symbolism, equating each of the 350 cattle on Thrinacia with a day of the year. Thus, the crew's impious act of consuming the sacred cattle could be seen as a metaphor for squandering or eating up their own days and lives through their reckless behavior. On the interpretation of Helios' role in Zeus' intervention, ancient scholars like Aristotle debated the nuances. Aristotle suggested that Helios' inability to see the theft of his cattle might be due to the vastness of his domain, where he sees everything but not necessarily all at once. Lampetia's role as the messenger, conveying the offense to Helios, symbolizes light as the messenger of sight and truth, reinforcing the sacred bond between Helios and his cattle. While Helios threatens Zeus for justice in the Odyssey, it is ultimately Zeus who executes divine retribution by destroying Odysseus' ship and crew with his lightning bolt. In Lucian's diverse body of work, Helios plays a prominent role beyond his appearances in the dialogues of the gods. One of Lucian's works, Icaro features a humorous exchange where Selene, the moon, laments to the protagonist Menippus about philosophers causing discord between her and her brother Helios. These philosophers propagate theories claiming that the moon's light is borrowed from the sun, although Selene herself asserts in the Phocylidia that she harbors no envy towards her brother's more intense rays. Moreover, they deride Helios as nothing more than a mere red-hot lump. Elsewhere in Lucian's works, Helios is depicted partaking in feasts alongside other gods on Mount Olympus. This depiction prompts Menippus to question how night can fall in the heavens when Helios is present, highlighting the whimsical and playful nature of Lucian's mythological narratives. In Lucian's renowned work A True Story, he presents a fantastical vision where the sun is not just a celestial body but a fully inhabited realm. Ruled by King Phaethon, referencing Helios's mythological son, the inhabitants of the sun find themselves embroiled in a cosmic conflict with the denizens of the moon, led by King Endymion, Selene's beloved. Their dispute centers on the colonization rights to the morning star, which is associated with Aphrodite. Diodorus Siculus offers a unique rendition of the myth of Helios and Selene, diverging from the more traditional narratives. According to Diodorus, Basilia, who succeeded her father Uranus on the throne, married her brother Hyperion. They had 2 children renowned for their beauty and virtue, Helios, the sun, and Selene, the moon. Envious of their siblings' attributes and fearing Hyperion's ambition, other brothers conspired against him. They slew Hyperion and drowned Helios in the river Eridanus, while Selene took her own life in grief. Following this tragic event, Helios appeared to his mourning mother in a dream, promising that both he and Selene would be transformed into immortal, divine beings. Henceforth, the moon, previously known as Meme, would be called Selene, and the radiant celestial fire in the heavens would forever bear his name. In another aspect of their myth, Selene harbored a deep love for the mortal Endymion. Often consumed by her passion, she would abandon her celestial duties to be with him. During these times, she entrusted her moon chariot to Helios. Initially unfamiliar with its operation, Helios eventually mastered driving the moon chariot as skillfully as his own sun chariot. Claudian recounts a tender aspect of Helios's infancy, noting that he and his sister Selene were nursed by their aunt, the water goddess Tethys. In those early days, Helios's light was not yet fully potent, and his rays, had not reached their full strength. Pausanias, in his writings, mentions a belief held by the people of Titani in Sicyon. They revered Titan as a brother of Helios, and named their town after him. However, Titan is often identified more broadly as Helios himself rather than a distinct figure. Pausanias offers an interpretation suggesting that Titan might have been a mortal who observed the agricultural seasons influenced by the sun, hence earning the title of Helios's brother. In Sophocles' tragedy Oedipus at Colonus, Oedipus directs a curse at Creon, invoking Helios among the gods to witness and bring judgment upon Creon for his actions. In Philostratus' Imagines, Helios is approached by Palestra, who seeks his aid in tanning her skin to achieve a sun-kissed hue, highlighting Helios' association with the transformative power of sunlight. In the myth of Apollo slaying the dragon Phaethon, the serpent's corpse is described as decaying under the powerful influence of shining Hyperion, a title associated with Helios, suggesting the sun god's potency in bringing about decay and transformation. Aelian adds that the wolf holds a special place in Helios's affection, noting that the wolf is also sacred to Apollo, who is sometimes referred to as Apollo Lycaeus, meaning Wolf Apollo. The god Helios presides over a notable lineage, with regions venerating him often claiming both mythological and genealogical descent from his lineage. For instance, the Cretans traced the ancestry of their king Idomeneus back to Helios through his daughter Pasiphae. Despite Helios having fewer love affairs compared to other gods, particularly Zeus, he is seen as less of a fertility deity, which is typically associated with rain gods in warm climates. Traditionally, the Oceanid nymph Perse is regarded as the wife of the sun god Helios, with whom he fathered various children depending on different versions of mythology. Among these notable offspring are Circe, the enchantress from Homer's Odyssey, Eets, the king of Colchis famous for guarding the golden fleece, Pasiphae, the wife of King Minos of Crete, Perses, who usurped his brother Eets's kingdom, and in some accounts, the Corinthian king Aloeus. The origins of these dark and mysterious children born to the source of all light remain unclear. Helios played a pivotal role in distributing land among his offspring. Aloeus received Sicyon, while Eets was granted Corinth, though the latter chose to establish his kingdom in Colchis instead. Ioannes Tsetses adds Calypso, traditionally the daughter of Atlas, to the list of Helios's children with Perse, perhaps due to the similarities Calypso shares with Circe in their roles as hosts to Odysseus in the Odyssey. Helios transported Eets to Colchis, where he would eventually rule, using his divine chariot. During the same journey, he transported Circe to her own abode, Aiaia. Helios also forewarned Eets about a prophecy predicting betrayal from one of his own descendants, which Eets interpreted as a threat from his daughter Chalciope and her children by Phrixus. Helios bestowed numerous gifts upon Eets, including a chariot drawn by swift steeds, a golden helmet with 4 plates, armor suitable for giants, and robes and a necklace as tokens of paternal affection. When Eets's daughter Medea betrayed him by helping Jason steal the golden fleece and fleeing with him, Eets invoked the witness of Helios and Zeus to testify against their unlawful actions and the harm inflicted upon him and his people. As the father of Eets and thus the grandfather of Medea, Helios plays a significant role in the mythological narratives surrounding Medea's fate, particularly in Euripides' rendition in Corinth. When Medea presents the poisoned robes and diadem to Princess Glauce, she claims they are gifts bestowed upon her by Helios himself. This act sets in motion a tragic chain of events where Glauce, her father King Creon, and Medea's own children by Jason meet their demise. After these atrocities, Helios aids Medea's escape from Corinth and her faithless husband Jason. According to Pseudo-Apollodorus and Seneca, Helios provides Medea with a chariot drawn by flying dragons, enabling her flight from the scene of her crimes. In Seneca's version, Medea's frustration leads her to question why her grandfather has not intervened more forcefully in the face of such wickedness. She even asks Helios to lend her his fiery chariot so that she can exact further vengeance and burn Corinth to the ground. Helios's dual role as the charioteer of the day, the all-seeing eye of Zeus, and as a figure associated with the occult and nighttime journeys, connects him deeply to characters like Medea, who are often portrayed as engaging with the darker aspects of human nature and supernatural powers. However, Helios is also attributed with relationships and offspring beyond Clytie. According to Rhodian tradition, he married Rhodes, after whom the island of Rhodes was named. Their union produced 7 sons known as the Helios, Alchemus, Cercophus, Macar, Actus, Teneges, Triopa, and Candylus, along with a daughter named Electrione. These children were considered the first inhabitants of Rhodes and played significant roles in local mythological narratives. Another notable relationship attributed to Helios is with Clytie, who is traditionally the mother of Phaethon and the Heliades. While their relationship is often portrayed as a liaison in other sources, Nonnus presents a different account in his epic poem, the Dionysiaca. According to Nonnus, Helios and the nymph Clytie fell deeply in love on the mythical island of Charon and were married with the blessing of Clytie's father, Oceanus. Their wedding was attended by various celestial beings, including the Ori, nymphs, Selene, and Eosphorus, the morning star, Venus, as well as Clytie's parents Oceanus and Tethys. Clytie soon became pregnant, and she and Helios raised their son Phaethon together. However, tragedy struck when Phaethon, driven by his desire to prove his lineage, asked his father for permission to drive his chariot of the sun across the sky. In some rare versions of the myth, Helios is even depicted as the father, rather than the brother, of his sisters Selene and Eos. A scholiast on Euripides explains that Selene is considered his daughter because she partakes of the solar light and changes her shape based on the position of the sun. Scholarly attention to the ancient Greek cults of Helios, as well as those of his sisters, has been relatively sparse. This scarcity is partly due to the limited availability of both literary and archaeological sources. Among the scattered cults dedicated to the 3 siblings throughout the ancient Greek world, Helios undoubtedly received the most significant attention. L.R. Farnell suggested that sun worship was once widespread and influential among pre-Hellenic cultures, but by the later historic period, only a few communities retained it as a prominent aspect of their state religion. Aristophanes' play piece contrasts the worship of Helios and Selene with that of the 12 Olympian gods, portraying them as representative deities of the Achaemenid Persians. This underscores the perception that Helios and Selene were considered minor gods in the Greek pantheon. One reason for their perceived minor status could be the Greeks' anthropomorphic conception of their gods. They tended to favor deities like Hermes, who could respond to human concerns in a relatable way. In contrast, Helios and Selene, as divine beings responsible for celestial light, were viewed as unlikely to interrupt their cosmic duties to intervene directly in human affairs. The tension between the traditional religious veneration of Helios, which was enriched with ethical and poetic symbolism by figures like Pindar, Aeschylus, and Sophocles, and the Ionian proto-scientific inquiry into celestial phenomena, referred to as meteora by the Greeks, came to a head during the trial of Anaxagoras around 450 BC. Anaxagoras proposed that the sun was not a deity but rather a gigantic, red-hot ball of metal. His trial foreshadowed the culturally significant trial of Socrates in 399 BC for charges related to impiety and corrupting the youth, marking a pivotal moment in the clash between traditional religious beliefs and emerging scientific thought in ancient Greece. Helios' cult in Athens did not gain prominence until the Hellenistic period, which followed the classical era. During this post-classical period, his worship can be seen as a product of broader influences related to the spread of cosmic and astral beliefs, possibly influenced by the reign of Alexander III, Alexander the Great. In Athenian religious practices, Helios was treated distinctly in terms of sacrificial offerings. According to a scholiast on Sophocles, the Athenians did not offer wine to Helios as they did to other gods. Instead, they made nephalia, or wineless, sober sacrifices. Athenaeus further elaborates that those who sacrificed to Helios brought honey to his altars instead of wine. This choice was rooted in the belief that a god who held the cosmos in order should not be associated with drunkenness. References to Helios in Athenian festivals highlight his agricultural significance. During the Thargelia, originally a festival in honor of Apollo, Helios and the Ori seasons were also honored with cereal offerings. A recently discovered decree mentions offerings to Sun, Seasons, and Apollo, demonstrating the association of these deities during a festival that coincided with the intense summer heat. This festival not only included cereal offerings but also introduced non-cereal foods and animal sacrifices, all of which were dependent on the blessings of Helios and the seasons for their fruition. Similarly, Helios and the Ori were revered during another Athenian festival, the Paeanopsia, which was dedicated to Apollo and included a feast. In Roman times, Helios continued to be associated with specific rituals and offerings. One notable example comes from an inscription from the Piraeus Asclepium, which prescribes cake offerings to various gods, including Helios and Mnemosyne. These offerings, known as arister, consisted of honey cakes and honeycombs that were placed on fire during the ceremony. It was customary in many places to maintain herds of red and white cattle in his honor, alongside other sacred white animals, particularly white horses. Ovid mentions that horses were often sacrificed to Helios, as fitting offerings to the swift and radiant god. In philosophical and literary contexts, Helios held symbolic significance as well. Plato, in his Republic, identifies Helios, the sun, as the symbolic offspring of the idea of the good, linking the sun's brightness and visibility with philosophical concepts of enlightenment and truth. The ancient Greeks referred to Sunday as the day of the sun in honor of Helios. Additionally, according to Philochorus, an Athenian historian and aethnographer of the 3rd century BC, the first day of each month was considered sacred to Helios, indicating his widespread importance in religious calendars and observances. The island of Rhodes stood as a paramount center for the cult of Helios, where he was revered as a major deity unlike in many other parts of ancient Greece. The worship of Helios on Rhodes was deeply intertwined with the island's identity and mythology, elevating him to a status akin to that of Olympian Zeus for Elis or Athena for Athens. Local myths, especially those concerning the Heliadae, emphasized Helios as not only a divine figure but also as the progenitor of the Rhodian people and their civilization, depicted in an anthropomorphic manner that resonated closely with the islanders. Central to the religious practices in Rhodes was the annual festival known as the Helia, dedicated to Helios. This festival, celebrated in his honor each year in the month of September, was a grand event that attracted athletes and envoys from neighboring states and even as far as the kings of Pergamos. The festivities included chariot races, musical contests, and gymnastic competitions, reflecting Helios's association with vitality, athleticism, and the seasonal cycles. A distinctive ritual during the Helia involved the sacrifice of a team of 4 horses, which were ceremonially thrown into the sea. This act was believed to appease Helios and ensure his continued favor upon Rhodes. The significance of the horse sacrifice underscored Helios's role as a deity closely tied to the sun's journey across the sky, symbolizing strength, speed, and divine power. The cult of Helios in Rhodes also manifested in monumental art and architecture. The Colossus of Rhodes, counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was a colossal statue erected in honor of Helios at the entrance of the harbor in the city of Rhodes. Standing approximately 33 meters, 108 feet, tall, it was comparable in size to the modern Statue of Liberty. Crafted by the sculptor Chares of Lindos, the Colossus symbolized the island's reverence for Helios as a guardian and protector, similar to how the Statue of Liberty represents freedom and democracy today. Despite its grandeur, the Colossus of Rhodes met its demise in 226 BC when an earthquake struck the island, causing it to collapse. According to legend, an oracle advised against rebuilding the statue, leaving its shattered remains as a testament to both the grandeur and vulnerability of human achievements. Helios's cult on Rhodes also absorbed elements of local hero worship, particularly that of Tlepolemus, who was originally regarded as the island's archetypes, founder. Over time, Helios came to be seen not only as a celestial deity but also as the progenitor of Rhodes itself, linking the divine and mortal realms through myth and ritual. Sanctuaries dedicated to Helios and associated nymphs, such as the one in Lorimen near Lindos, further underscored his enduring importance in the religious and civic life of Rhodes. The priesthood of Helios played a crucial role in maintaining these religious traditions. In Rhodes, the priesthood was sometimes appointed by lot, although in the city, It was held as a hereditary position passed down from father to son. Revered for his ability to observe everything with his unerring eye from his position as the sun in the sky, Helios was often invoked alongside Zeus and Gaia in solemn oaths and alliances, ensuring that any vow taken under their watchful gaze was binding and immutable. In Homer's Iliad, he is among the three deities invoked to witness the truce between the Greeks and Trojans, emphasizing his role as a guarantor of agreements among mortals. This theme of invoking Helios as a witness extends beyond formal oaths. He is called upon in tragedies like Sophocles' Oedipus Rex and Euripides' Medea, where characters beseech him to witness their actions or plight, appealing to his role as a cosmic observer and arbiter of justice. The concept of Helios as a witness is not limited to formal agreements, but also extends to instances of wrongdoing and justice. For instance, Prometheus calls upon Helios to witness the suffering inflicted upon him by other gods. In Aeschylus's Agamemnon, Orestes demands that Helios bear witness to his mother Clytemnestra's impious actions, further underscoring Helios's association with divine justice and retribution. Throughout history, his name appears in various treaties and alliances, such as the agreement between Athens and Satriparus of Thrace, demonstrating his significance as a divine guarantor of alliances and agreements among city-states. In the realm of necromancy, Helios appears in the Greek magical papyri, where rituals involve invoking him over a skull cup containing the remains of someone who suffered a violent death. Through these rituals, practitioners sought to summon the spirit of the deceased to gain knowledge and insights. Helios's association with Hecate in cursing magic further illustrates his role in both protective and vengeful magical practices. In tomb inscriptions from parts of Asia Minor, Helios, along with Selene and other gods, was invoked to prevent the desecration of graves and to curse potential violators. Helios was also often invoked in funeral imprecations, ranking third in terms of frequency, after chthonic and lunar gods, and usually in the company of another lunar deity. As an all-seeing deity, Helios was believed to have the ability to witness hidden crimes and injustices on Earth, making him a fitting deity to invoke in prayers for retribution and protection. In addition to his role in necromancy and protective magic, Helios was also associated with love magic, akin to Aphrodite. Ancient texts suggest that individuals sought Helios's aid in matters of love, including both heterosexual and homoerotic relationships. Magical recipes and rituals invoking Helios for affection spells aim to harness his power to attract and strengthen romantic bonds. The use of images and stones in magical rituals also involved Helios, where practitioners would consecrate stones or engrave images invoking him to imbue them with luck, honor, success, and strength. This is the magical sphere of Helios. It is a marble orb discovered in 1866 on a hill outside the Temple of Dionysus in Athens. On one side, Helios is depicted as Cosmocrator, the all-powerful ruler of the universe. He sits on a throne beneath an arch, holding a whip and 3 flaming torches. The dogs at his feet likely symbolize the bright, dog stars, Sirius and Procyon. The remainder of the sphere is filled with astral, magical, alchemical, and geometric symbols, allegorical animal scenes, numbers, and unintelligible inscriptions, possibly invocations to Helios. Only one word, engraved within one of the 5 intersecting circles, can be clearly read, which is ether, the first of the 5 elements of nature: ether, earth, water, fire, and air. The sphere is considered a magical object related to the worship of Helios. Since it was found in the Temple of Dionysus, it might be connected to some sort of magical ritual intended to ensure the owner's victory in athletic or theatrical competitions. In ancient Greece, Helios was also revered in the realm of dreams, where people sought his guidance and protection from foretold evils or omens. It was believed that revealing dreams to Helios, often addressing the sky or the air as conduits to reach him, could avert any negative outcomes predicted within them. This practice is illustrated in Sophocles' Electra, where Clytemnestra shares her dreams with Helios to seek reassurance and protection from their ominous portents. Similarly, in Euripides' Iphigenia among the Taurians, Iphigenia also invokes Helios in connection with her dreams. According to Artemidorus, dreaming of transforming into a god, such as Helios, was considered an auspicious sign, particularly if the transformation was complete and flawless. For instance, Artemidorus recounts the dream of a man who envisioned himself as Helios, adorned with a sun crown featuring 11 rays. Despite this minor deficiency, the dream was still interpreted favorably, indicating that Helios's presence in dreams was viewed positively. In dreams, Helios could manifest in two primary forms: the sensible form, symbolized by the orb of the sun itself, and the intelligible form, depicting Helios as a humanoid deity. By the 3rd century AD, Helios had accrued a complex amalgamation of attributes and symbolism, influenced significantly by Apollo and the Roman sun god Sol Invictus. In 274 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian officially instituted the cult of Sol Invictus, also known as Helios Megistos, Great Helios. An Orphic hymn dedicated to Helios, found among the Orphic corpus, celebrated his divine attributes and role in the cosmic order. The Mithras Liturgy, another significant text, described Helios as the ruler of the elements. Proclus, a prominent Neoplatonist philosopher, composed a hymn to Helios that reflected his theological importance as a cosmic deity and mediator between the divine and human realms. Julian the Apostate, the last pagan emperor of Rome, elevated Helios to a central position in his religious revival efforts. Julian's theological framework portrayed Helios as a triune deity, the one governing the highest realm of intelligible gods, Helios Mithras, the supreme god of the intellectual realm, and the sun, representing Helios's physical manifestation in the visible cosmos. Julian's theological conception of Helios was deeply influenced by Neoplatonism and Mithraism, presenting Helios as a mediator and unifier of cosmic principles and divine energies. The mosaic discovered in the Vatican necropolis, depicting a figure resembling Sol or Helios driving a solar chariot, has sparked scholarly debate. Some scholars have interpreted this figure as a representation of Christ, drawing parallels to early Christian iconography that also depicted Christ driving a celestial chariot across the sky. However, others dispute these Christian associations, suggesting that the figure is a non-religious depiction of the sun deity without theological connotations. In the Greek magical papyri, Helios is depicted with a vast domain, revered as the creator of life and the lord of both the heavens and the cosmos. His portrayal extends to dominion over the sea, underscoring his sovereignty over diverse realms of existence. A striking motif within these texts associates Helios with 12 animals, each representing an hour of the day, a symbolic linkage paralleling the 12 signs of the zodiac, thereby aligning Helios with the cyclical nature of time and celestial influence. Syncretism features prominently in the depiction of Helios within these magical texts. He is often fused with related deities, such as Harpocrates, depicted seated on a lotus adorned with rays of light. This imagery symbolizes Helios's status as the rising sun, elevated above worldly impurities, an interpretation echoed by the Neoplatonist philosopher Iamblichus, who interpreted the lotus throne as signifying intellectual and spiritual supremacy. Furthermore, the Greek magical papyri merge Helios with Mithras, reflecting influences from Emperor Julian's theological syncretism. Helios Mithras, as portrayed in these texts, is attributed with revealing the secrets of immortality to adept magicians. Notably, some passages describe Helios Mithras traversing the sun's path not in a traditional chariot but aboard a boat, an intriguing assimilation, reminiscent of the Egyptian sun god Ra, who navigates the celestial waters in his solar bark. Additionally, Helios's role in these texts extends to mythological motifs, including his depiction as restraining the serpent. This motif likely alludes to Apophis, the serpent deity of Egyptian mythology who threatens Ra's nightly journey through the underworld. As a deity embodying solar power, cosmic wisdom, and syncretic assimilation, Helios emerges as a central figure in both mystical practice and philosophical discourse during antiquity, leaving a lasting imprint on the esoteric traditions of the Mediterranean world. In numerous instances throughout the Greek magical papyri, Helios assumes an amalgamated identity, notably with the appellation Iael, a name derived from the Hebrew deity Yahweh. Moreover, Helios is identified as the agathos daemon, revered as the god of the gods and equated with Horus Harpocrates, the youthful aspect of the Egyptian sun god. Neoplatonist philosophers such as Proclus and Iamblichus sought to elucidate the complexities of Helios's syncretic manifestations as depicted in the Greek magical papyri. Proclus conceptualized Helios as a cosmic deity encompassing diverse forms and attributes, which he described as coiled up within Helios's divine essence. These attributes were believed to be diffused throughout the cosmos, imparting their divine qualities to all entities that participate in Helios's divine nature, including angels, demons, souls, animals, herbs, and stones. Central to Neoplatonic thought was the practice of theurgy, a mystical and ritualistic endeavor aimed at invoking the presence and power of the gods to achieve spiritual ascent and union with the divine. Iamblichus emphasized the importance of utilizing sacred objects such as stones, plants, animals, and aromatic substances in theurgical rituals. These items were considered imbued with elemental powers sacred to specific gods, functioning through a form of sympathetic magic to establish a mystical connection between the practitioner and the divine realm. Walter Burkert notes that in Greek religious thought, different names could either refer to the same divine entity or be consciously equated, as exemplified in the case of Apollo and Helios. Apollo's association with the sun dates back to the 5th century BC, though the widespread identification between Apollo and the sun god Helios became more pronounced in later periods. Thus, Apollo came to be depicted in some later myths and artworks as driving a chariot pulled by 4 horses. However, it is important to recognize that Helios remains the older and original sun god with the chariot motif in Greek mythology. In the Homeric epics, Apollo is depicted distinctly from Helios. Apollo is characterized as a deity who wields a silver bow and is known as a plague dealer, lacking the solar attributes attributed to Helios. The earliest definitive reference to Apollo being equated with Helios appears in the surviving fragments of Euripides' play Phaethon. In this work, Clymene, Phaeton's mother, mourns the loss of her son, attributing his demise to Helios, whom men rightly call Apollo, interpreted here as Apollon the Destroyer. By the Hellenistic era, Apollo became increasingly linked with solar symbolism, in both cult and literary traditions. The epithet Phoebus, meaning bright, was commonly applied to Apollo and later transferred by Latin poets to the sun god Sol. This identification was widely accepted in philosophical texts and writings by figures such as Parmenides, Empedocles, Plutarch, and Crates of Thebes. Additionally, certain Orphic texts also incorporate this identification of Apollo with Helios, emphasizing their shared solar attributes and significance. Pseudo-Eratosthenes elaborates on the mythic tradition concerning Orpheus in his work Placings Among the Stars. Orpheus, having descended into Hades to retrieve his wife, Eurydice, shifted his allegiance from Dionysus to Helios, whom he also addressed as Apollo. Orpheus would ascend Mount Pangaean each dawn to witness the sunrise, an act that incurred the wrath of Dionysus. According to Aeschylus, this anger led Dionysus to send the Basarides, who dismembered Orpheus in retribution. Strabo, in his geographical writings, elucidates the association between Artemis and Apollo with Selene and Helios respectively. According to Strabo, these associations stem from the observable changes these celestial bodies bring about in the temperature of the air. As gods linked with pestilential diseases and sudden deaths, Artemis and Apollo were seen to exert influence akin to Selene and Helios. Pausanias further reinforces this association by highlighting Apollo's role as a healing deity and the father of Asclepius. The affinity between Apollo and Helios also extends to their shared attribute of omniscience. Apollo is renowned as the god of prophecy, possessing the ability to foresee and reveal the future. This knowledge is derived from his position in the sky above the earth, symbolizing metaphorical enlightenment akin to the mental illumination provided by the sun's physical light. In contrast, Helios embodies the literal and physical light of the sun, responsible for the seasonal changes of summer and winter, and metaphorically bringing hidden truths to light, as illustrated in the myth of Aphrodite and Hephaestus. In the Orphic tradition, Helios is addressed as Paeon, a title meaning healer, and is depicted holding a golden lyre, attributes commonly associated with Apollo. Conversely, Apollo's hymn describes him as Titan and the illuminator of mortals, epithets traditionally linked with Helios. According to Athenaeus, The 6th century BC lyric poet Telesilla ascribes the song sung in honor of Apollo as the sun-loving song. This designation implies that the song is intended to invoke the sun to emerge from behind the clouds, particularly sung by children during bad weather to bring forth sunlight. However, Julius Pollux, writing much later, provides a more detailed description of the Philhelios ritual but makes no mention of Apollo, instead attributing it solely to Helios. Sithinus of Teos writes that Apollo uses the bright light of the sun as his harpquill. Similarly, a fragment of Timotheus' lyric poetry invokes Helios as an archer, with the invocation Hail Paean, a common address to Apollo and his healing aspects, indicating a subtle connection between Apollo's attributes and those traditionally associated with Helios. This invocation likely pertains to esoteric doctrine rather than a widely held belief. Scholia on Homer's Iliad report a symbolic battle known as the Titanomachy in Song 21, where Poseidon combats Apollo. Here, Apollo represents the partial fire, symbolized by the sun, in opposition to the full force of water embodied by Poseidon. The full water versus partial fire is depicted in the struggle between Hephaestus and the river's commander. In Aeschylus 7 against Thebes, it is asserted that Apollo and Helios do not venture into the underworld. Apollo is described as never walking in the realm of Hades, and the place itself is termed sunless. Similarly, Helios, as the glowing sun, refrains from casting his beams upon sleep and death, personified as dreadful deities who remain untouched by the sun's light whether he ascends into heaven or descends back to earth. Representations of Apollo with solar rays encircling his head in art became particularly prevalent during the Roman Empire, notably under Emperor Elagabalus, 218 to 222 AD. Ovid, however, despite contributing to the notion of Apollo as the sun god in modern times, did not explicitly equate Apollo with soul in his works. According to Ovid, Apollo lacks solar characteristics. Instead, he is depicted with attributes such as a bow, arrows, and lyre. In Ovid's narratives, Apollo is often depicted as busy during the daytime, as exemplified in stories like his game with Hyacinthus, where the sun is mentioned as a separate entity, which would not be feasible if Apollo were responsible for driving the sun chariot. Soul, as portrayed by Ovid, appears in fewer stories compared to Apollo. When Soul does appear, he is differentiated by his lineage as the son of Hyperion, brother to Luna, and father to Circe and Pasiphae. The only epithet shared between Soul and Apollo is Phoebus, which scholars like Ottfried Müller and Farnell argue is not inherently solar in origin but rather an epithet that was fittingly applied. Fontenrose argues that Ovid is unlikely to have conflated figures like Latona, Circe, Pyrrha, and Diana as the same entity simply because he uses Titania for all four. There is a singular instance where Apollo and Soul seem to be aligned in Ovid's work, specifically in the story of Callisto. Here, Ovid describes Diana finding respite in her brother's sunlight, implying a close relationship between Apollo and the sun. However, within the same passage, Luna, the moon, is mentioned, suggesting a nuanced differentiation between Apollo and Soul even within Ovid's narrative. In Doric tradition, Zeus is referred to as Helios Zeus, meaning Zeus the sun, which reflects the conflation of Zeus with Helios in certain cults and beliefs. An early inscription on the base of Mamia's dedication dating from the 4th or 3rd century BC provides significant evidence of the joint worship of Helios and Zeus Mylikios, suggesting a syncretism where Helios' solar attributes and Zeus' supreme authority over the universe were merged. This conflation extended to myths and philosophical interpretations, where Helios, as the visible sun, was seen as a material form of Zeus, enabling direct interaction with mortals. According to Plutarch in his work Questions Romani, Helios is depicted as Zeus incarnate, asserting Zeus' dominion over the year, paralleling Selene's role as Queen Hera over the months. The connection between Helios and Zeus finds its roots possibly in earlier Proto-Indo-European religion, where the sun was often perceived as the eye of Dies Pater, the sky father. This ancient perception may have influenced the later Greek identification of Helios as an eye or manifestation of Zeus. In Emperor Julian's work against the Galileans, Zeus and Helios are depicted as the joint parents of Asclepius, the god of medicine, illustrating their combined roles in healing and divine protection. Similarly, into the mother of the gods, both Zeus and Helios are interchangeably named as consorts and co-rulers of the Anatolian mother goddess Cybele, highlighting their roles in fertility and the natural world. In another of Julian's works, Against Heracleios, the emperor seeks guidance from Zeus, who appoints Helios as the way to reach him, further emphasizing their close relationship and shared authority. Julian's interpretations often draw from classical literature, such as the Odyssey, where Helios' threat to shine among the dead in the underworld compels Zeus to accede to his wishes without asserting dominance, contrasting with Zeus' confrontations with other Olympian gods in the Iliad. This episode underscores the mutual respect and perhaps dependency between Zeus and Helios, where Helios' role as the bringer of light and life to the world is acknowledged by Zeus without conflict. Helios' association with Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, is evident in several ancient inscriptions and literary sources. A dedicatory inscription from Smyrna, modern-day Izmir in Turkey, dating to the 1st to 2nd century AD, describes a sanctuary dedicated to God himself, who is the most exalted among a group of 6 deities. Among these deities are clothed statues of Platon Helios and Kur Selene, which can be interpreted as Pluto the sun and Kore the moon, respectively. This grouping indicates a syncretic fusion of solar and underworld elements, suggesting a complex understanding of Helios' role in relation to the realm of the dead. The concept of Platon Helios appears in other literary sources as well, where he is associated with Kur Selene and Helios Apollon. This imagery portrays the sun on its nighttime course, suggesting its journey through the underworld before rising again in the east for the next day. Roman poet Apuleius describes a mystical rite where the sun appears at midnight to the initiate at the gates of Proserpina, hinting at the idea of a nocturnal sun, possibly referring to Platon Helios. An ancient oracle from Claros highlights the seasonal aspect of solar deities, associating the names of Zeus, Hades, Helios, Dionysus, and Geo with different times of the year. According to Macrobius, Io or Geo represents Hades in winter, Zeus in spring, Helios in summer, and Io in autumn. Helios often appears in ancient pottery and coins, illustrating his significance in ancient Greek culture. The earliest depictions of Helios in humanoid form date from the late 6th and early 5th centuries BC on Attic black figure vases. These typically show him frontally as a bearded man on his chariot with a sun disk. A late 6th century or early 5th century BC Leucothoe attributed to the Sappho painter shows him as a bearded male, with his long hair bound in acrobolos, holding a goad, and wearing a finely pleated long linen tunic of a charioteer. In later art, Helios is consistently drawn as beardless and young, typically depicted with a radiant crown, a right hand often raised in a gesture of power, and the left hand usually holding a whip or a globe. By the middle of the 5th century BC, Helios had lost his beard as his identification with the youthful, fair Apollo began, though Helios is still depicted with a fuller face than Apollo. On Rhodian coins he was shown as a beardless god, with thick and flowing hair surrounded by beams. He was also presented as a young man clad in a tunic, with curling hair and wearing buskins. While early depictions of Helios showed him holding a whip and reins of the quadriga, later ones replaced these with a globe in his left hand and a raised right hand. Helios is sometimes depicted with a solar disk rather than a sun crown in some depictions, which radiates, unlike Selene's lunar disk which does not. Helios iconography, used by the Ptolemies after representations of Alexander the Great as Alexander Helios, came to symbolize power and epiphany, and was borrowed by several Egyptian deities in the Roman period. Other rulers who had their portraits done with solar features include Ptolemy III Euergetes, one of the Ptolemaic kings of Egypt, who had a bust with holes in the fillet for the sunrays and gold coins depicting him with a radiant halo on his head like Helios and holding the aegis. Helios was also frequently depicted in mosaics, usually surrounded by the 12 zodiac signs and accompanied by Selene. From the 3rd and 4th centuries CE onwards, the sun god was seen as an official imperial Roman god and thus appeared in various forms in monumental artworks, portrayed wearing a radiant crown signifying the sun's rays and driving a quadriga. The cult of Helios or Sol had a notable function in Eretz Israel. Since the emperor was regarded as the ruler of the world, his figure's right-handed greeting was recognized as a symbol of power. Helios was Constantine the Great's patron, and so, that ruler came to be identified with Helios. In his new capital city, Constantinople, Constantine recycled a statue of Helios to represent himself in his portrait, as Nero had done with Sol, which was not an uncommon practice among pagans. The position of the emperors in the Arch of Galerius is comparable to the position of Helios on the Dieberg plaque and also in coinage. A considerable portion, if not the majority, of Jewish Helios material dates from the 3rd through the 6th centuries CE, including numerous mosaics of the god in Jewish synagogues and invocations in papyri. In conclusion, Helios, though not the most popular among the Greek gods, remains a profound and mysterious figure. His role as the sun god, coupled with his symbolic associations and cultural impact, positions him as a vital and fascinating character in the tapestry of Greek mythology. Through his enduring presence in art, literature, and religious practices, Helios continues to illuminate the ancient world's collective imagination and spiritual landscape.